Welcome to day 2 of MIX. I hope everyone's having a good time. Is everyone excited? Nice, good, good. Just a pre-warning, this is Silverlight 101. If you know XAML, if you know Silverlight, you might want to go check out some of the other sessions. Just sort of a heads up to set expectations here. Okay, no one's getting up. I won't be offended. So anyways, MIX is by far my favorite conference. And here's why. Because a few years ago, before I worked at Microsoft, I had a conversation with .NET. I said, .NET, I need a little bit of space. It's not you, it's me. I need to see other platforms. So I did some Ruby on Rails. I did some PHP. And then a few years ago, at a MIX convention just like this thing called Silverlight came out. I'm like, sweet, this is C#, this is Visual Studio, and yet this is really rich, really great looking, non-boring, boxy applications. So that's why I'm super excited to be introducing you guys to Silverlight today. So I'm Sean Oster. I'm a program manager now working for Microsoft on the Silverlight team, and I'll be giving you an introduction to Silverlight development for developing applications. So there's 3 things I want you to walk away knowing here. First one is how to create a Silverlight application. How many of you are here to learn how to learn Silverlight so you can program against Windows Phone? All right. Who's here they want to know Silverlight for the web, just in general? Oh, good, good. The good thing about all these hands is you're both the same group. One thing I'm going to show is that it's exactly the same code. So you can all raise your hand because you're all in the same group today. Next, you're going to walk away knowing how to leverage your creativity. That sounds survey Morpheus. What does it actually mean? It means you're going to know how to use the tools. It means you're going to know how to say, I want to make this really cool animation that does this and this and this. Where do I start? That's a big question when you first jump into a platform. It's, sweet, I know I can animate. How do I animate? And of course, how to use the tools to make that actually happen. What is Silverlight? Does everyone here know what Silverlight is? Is there anyone who's like, what is this crazy Silverlight thing? Okay, cool, I got a hand back there. Silverlight is powerful development platform. Basically, the .NET framework rocks. It's one of the best things about using C# and going with Silverlight is the super rich framework that can do. It has an amazing stack of functions, amazing stack of, it has LINQ, it has XML support, it has REST and SOAP and Atom support. It's all wrapped up. At the same time, you can create gorgeous looking applications easy. If anyone's done old Win32 development or GDI development, you're like, oh good, I can make it work, but it looks ugly and it looks boring. And personally, if everyone wanted just boring, we'd all drive the same car. You don't go looking for a car just on specs. You go looking for beauty. And that's what Silverlight helps give you. Today, I'm just going to cover the basics of Silverlight. XAML, C#, some styling, how to hook up events. Like I say, some 101s, some things that you might have seen the keynotes. You're like, wow, an application in 8 minutes? Now I want to do it. Okay, where do I start? But beyond all that introductory stuff, there's a whole wealth of stuff that Silverlight can do. Data manipulation, media support, input support, whether it's mouse or touch or tablet, cross-platform. Does everyone here know that Silverlight is Windows and Mac? All right, back there. And now it's also on Windows Phone. That's why it's a great extension for Silverlight. So where does Silverlight fit on the phone? I know there's a lot of people here interested in Windows Phone. And this is sort of where it fits in the whole platform. You've probably seen this slide a few dozen times, and if you haven't yet, you will. Silverlight is the runtime on the phone for developing applications. Silverlight and XNA are how you get your creativity, your delightful, interactive, just rock star applications onto the phone. And from there, you can build everything. So, again, phone is a hot topic. So what exactly is Windows Phone? How does Silverlight relate to that? Well, Silverlight on Windows Phone is SL3. So if you go looking for blog posts and tips and tricks, look for Silverlight 3. Then we added a ton of performance tuning because you want it fast. We added input integration. So obviously you want to be able to interact with your applications. It's already built in. You touch a text box, the on-screen keyboard comes up. You flick a list, it automatically has the built-in physics. We obviously did hardware media. You want the same video experience on the phone as everything else has. Sensor integration. This is where you shake, rattle, and roll. This is vibration. This is accelerometer. This is location services. And then OS model integration. You don't want your application to seem like it's not part of an experience. You're like, oh, well, I don't really want to use that app. It doesn't fit into the flow. Silverlight applications out of the box will flow into the entire OS on the phone. And then relaxed sandbox constraints. That's pretty much just saying every platform has different security concerns. On the phone, they're slightly different. We could relax a few constraints that you normally see in Silverlight in the browser. One of those is cross-domain policy checks. Does anyone ever have to deal with cross-domain policies? Yeah, I want to hear a yay for that one. Because how often do you go to hit a really cool REST endpoint, and you're like, oh, I can't do that in Silverlight. There is no cross-domain policy. Have to create a proxy. Forget about it. Now, on the phone, that's gone. That is an awesome thing. OK, I tried to make that very short. Who wants to see some actual code now? Yeah, there we go. You're here for the code, right? Not here for the marketing spiel. OK, XAML. What is XAML? You're going to hear this a ton. If you don't know already, here's the definitive answer. XAML, Extensible Application Markup Language. It's just plain old XML. Nothing special about it. It's a declarative markup language, like HTML. Do we have a bunch of HTML coders? Yeah? XHTML? Anyone big into that debate? So, anyways, it's just that. It's just pretty much straight XML. There's a little code sample here, a little snippet. Nothing to be scared of. Angle brackets, elements, attributes. The other half of the coin, the other part that actually makes your applications go, is the code behind the XAML, otherwise known as just your code behind file. Everything you see in XAML, in between those angle brackets, maps to something in code. You can interact with it, you can manipulate it, you can change it. At the same time, not only can you manipulate it, you can also do anything in code that you can do in XAML. Now sometimes, and often you're not going to want to because it's sort of tedious, but you can. There's an exception to every rule, and you can do it in code, pure code if you want. So what does that actually look like? It looks like this. So this app is something we're going to build towards at the end of the demo. It's very, very simple, very basic. Here's Expression Blend, another tool we're going to show. And here we are in Visual Studio. Now I'm going to start out in Silverlight 3 for the web, just to prove that everything we do in one, you can do in the other. Your skills translate. There's nothing special about one or the other. So a basic file, new project, Silverlight application, my basic project. We're not going to make it part of a larger website, so we don't need to check this box. We want SL3 or Silverlight 3. OK, so what am I seeing here? Here's Visual Studio. Here's your XAML editor, your design surface, and here's your text editor. So you can actually see the text representation of what you have on the screen. Let's do a quick overview of what's in your project. Your main page is right here. This is your entry point into your application. .xaml, that's your XAML file. Pretty self-explanatory. So let's actually do some XAML. Just as you saw on the slide, have a text block. We'll give it some text. You are here. Let's make it a little bit bigger so everyone in the back row can see. And then let's close out the tag. Now I have a setting in Visual Studio that automatically aligns the attributes, trying to make it easier to see. So if things jump around, that's what you're seeing. Push F5. All right, You're all Silverlight developers. I'm done. Someone else can come up and take over now. This is it. It's beautiful, isn't it? Well, apparently Visual Studio is very cranky about that, but it's okay. It just keeps on rolling. So just to prove that everything we do in XAML we can do in code, we're going to delete this, and we're going to go to the code behind. So I expand out the XAML, and there's your code. Double-click. This is the very first method that gets called when your application starts. Actually, that's a lie. There's one in this application XAML here, which is for the application in its entirety. And then this, in turn, brings up your page. But for right now, we're going to start here. We had a text block that we saw in XAML, so we declarative type text block. It's a basic text block. We want a new one. It knows I want to create one. Set some text. I am here too, minus the squiggly. Basic text block, font size. So at this point, this will create the exact same element, exact same thing we saw in XAML. Now, one thing to know is it's not part of anything yet. It's floating out there. It's not attached. It's not been put into the visual tree. The visual tree is exactly what it sounds like. It's a hierarchical list of controls based on sort of a parent-child relationship. That's how you nest elements. It's a lot like the HTML box model. Things are nested inside of each other. It's a very easy concept to grasp, but it's also something that you might want to become familiar with, because you walk this tree up and down looking for controls at times, doing manipulations with it. So if you hear the word visual tree, this is all it is. It's where your controls live in your application. And because of that, I need to actually add it to something. Here's my children. Add. Text block. Save. F5. All right. Now we've gone from 101 to 102. Close that. So that's just a basic XAML and C#. Oh, and that's a trivia quiz. So from here, shapes. We're going to build these layers one at a time. Shapes are your basic primitives. I probably don't have to explain shapes to anyone. Circles, rectangles, polygon, paths. An important thing to know is they're all vector-based. So they scale well on the phone, or as you get bigger on a monitor, or if you get bigger on, convention center displays. It'll all look crisp and clean and clear. You can import them from Photoshop and Illustrator, which is great for us more dev-centric that don't quite have the mad, design skills. Who are the designers in here today? You are my idols. Thank you. So thank you to the designers that have made any of my stuff look good. Oh, that is backwards. Brushes. So you can draw a shape, you want to fill it. Basic concept. We have 4 types of brushes. You have a solid color brush. That's the basic, just fill. You have a gradient, and you can do linear or you can do radial gradients, and you can set multiple stop points. Image, you can take an image and paint it onto an element to create sort of textures, texture mapping. And media, you can actually map a video onto an element. Okay, let's build up our demo, one layer at a time. So go back over here, and I will again. Well, one, you probably won't be doing a lot of element creation in code, so we're just going to get rid of this. We're going to come back over here, undo this delete. Now we have some text. Now I want an ellipse, because we're going to make that sort of you are here application. Select that, come back to my canvas. Here's our basic shape. Now I can come down here and I can set fill in XAML, or I can go to my property editor. And this allows me to look at all the properties for my element. And here's those basic brushes I was talking about. Solid, gradients, various, you could do an image, but we just want a solid one. Nice big red dot right here. Pretty basic. No one's pretty wowed right now at this point. Come back over here. So controls. Now we're starting to actually add some Go to our application. Controls encapsulate functionality. They're your buttons. They're your list box. They're the basics of how your applications start to actually be interactive. One thing to note, you have the XAML and you have the C#. How do they relate? How do you get from one to the other? Well, you want to make sure that your XAML, all your controls, have a name. Now, by default, Visual Studio gives it a name, and you'll see it as one of the attributes, name equals. But if you don't have one, if you've coded it up by hand, make sure to give it an X name. Here's a brief little snippet of what a control looks like, just a basic button. Events. Events are what make controls controls. You actually want to click the button and have it do something. Clicking on the button raises an event that you have to handle. So you need to create an event handler. Visual Studio, Expression Blend, they can create the events for you. You can type them by hand. They can auto-generate in code. It's super easy to start coding this stuff. So we'll pop back over. OK, I'm going to show you some of my amazing design skills here. Take a button, put this nice button there. It's looking pretty good, right? That's an attractive application. Now, if I want, I can double-click on this to actually create the event. Or I can come down and find my button, and I can type into it and say, I have a click event. And by default, it'll create the event for me, another time-saving feature. Now, instead of flopping back and forth between these tabs, I'm just going to push F7. That'll swap back and forth. Shift F7 to go into XAML editor, F7 to go into the text in the code editor. And I want to do something. Well, before I can have it do something, we have to go up here, and I want to actually modify this text block here. So we have to give it a name. The name is title text. Switch back over. Title text is, now we're cooking. Give it a quick run. Give it a click. Now we're cooking. This is, you can publish this app in the marketplace, and you're done. You make millions. But I'm going to beat you to it. OK, so this is fairly unattractive, this code, is what I can tell, is what I'm hearing. So right after I talk about layout, I'm actually going to switch and show you some different layouts to actually make it look good and start laying these controls out in a non-haphazard fashion. So the layout system in Silverlight is very flexible. If you've used HTML, you know the layout system there is very flexible, sometimes too flexible. The box model can get a little weird sometimes. At the same time, if you've used Win32 editors, everything is exactly pixel-based. I want to go left 10, top 20. Again, not very flexible. So in Silverlight, we give you multiple options, multiple layout containers, or called panels. So there's a canvas. Canvas is sort of your basic fixed position panel. You say, I want it exactly left over 20. I want it down exactly 20. And for there, it will stay for all time. Next is a stack panel. Stack panel is a great control. It does exactly what it says. Can anyone guess what it does? Just shout it out. Yes, stacks. Intuitive. I like that. It just stacks them either vertically or horizontal. Next, the most flexible is grid. Grid is a lot like a table, but not. It's not like an HTML table. Anyone have horror stories from HTML tables in here? Yes. There should be lots of groaning about those. So the actual grid system with its rows and columns in Silverlight is much more flexible, and it's meant to be a layout system, not a semantic informational display that's been abused over the years. So let's actually look at doing some layout. So this, as beautiful as it is, let's start on something new. Now, one thing I'm doing is I've gone from a Silverlight 3 web project to a phone. And we're going to do the exact same code, and you're going to see how it looks exactly the same, yet been styled uniquely for the phone. Same code, same event handlers, same everything, same layout system, just on the phone. We can all marvel at the nice design surface. Obviously, it looks like a phone. You've seen this a few times. So let's just slide this over here. I think we all understand what these do. We have a nice blank area. No one wants to watch me type, so we're going to add these controls back in. Now that's already looking a lot better. That radial gradient, I had a designer help me. So we're going to collapse this, and we're going to see how the different layout systems work. So by default, it comes in with a grid, but we're going to use an actual canvas here. Not that. Whoa. That's not a control, by the way. That is. So, as you can see, it instantly updated the layout. These are not exactly where you'd want them, so we can come in here and we can drag them around and reposition them. Now, one thing you'll notice is now we have these new properties, canvas.left, canvas.top. And one of the reasons I want to call these out is these are what are called attached properties. So an ellipse, a ball, if you're holding a ball in your hands, it doesn't have a left, it doesn't have a top, it doesn't know where it is in physical space. Things that contain it do know where it is. So the canvas itself defines this thing called left and top. Anything you put inside of a canvas inherits those properties. So any control inside of it can now have a left and a top. And you'll see this with grid as well. So if you just put a text block down and you say dot left, you're like, where's my left? It's actually a property of canvas. Well, fixed position, not so flexible, especially on a phone that rotates from portrait to landscape. So we're going to undo that. So a more flexible system is the stack panel. Now I'm glad actually this came up, because don't freak out if you see this, but freak out if you do see that. That's better. Reload the designer. Don't worry, nothing's broken, nothing's caught on fire. You're in good hands. As you can see, they're stacked on top of each other. If we get really creative, we can say horizontal, and we can make, orientation equals horizontal. And the ball is sort of down because I have it centered, but they're actually going left to right. So that's the stack panel. Now let's go back to our grid. I'll back all of this out, back to our C's. Grid. Grid is really the most flexible layout. And to prove it, we're going to add in some rows. So I have some predefined code over here. All it is defining the rows. I'm saying I have however many rows this is, 6, and I want controls to go into each one of them. Now you can either say auto, meaning take as much size as the controls inside of it and not any more. Or you can say star, or it's pretty much saying take the rest of the space that's available to me to fill out the space. It's good when you have like a title and then a subtitle and then a big list box to fill the space. Use star. You can also do a fixed height if you want. You can put in 200. But that sort of loses some of the flexibility at that point. As you can see, my ball is in the wrong place, so I use attached properties again. They'll keep coming back. Grid. A grid knows about rows. I want this in row 1, because the row system is 0-based. Well, now we're getting closer to a real application. Okay, so that's all been pretty basic so far. Everyone agrees, pretty 101, not very exciting. Now, where do we bring in the delight? The delight comes in with transforms. The transform can alter any shape, whether it's text, an existing control, or media. I'm sure you've seen some gratuitous Silverlight demos where a video is flipping around, spinning around. This is how you do it. Transforms, they can rotate, you can skew, you can scale, you can translate. If you know your math, you can create your own type of transform and shove it into a matrix. And then there's projections. Everyone seen in the Windows Phone demonstrations how pages will flip in and out like a stiff page in a book? That's done through a projection. A projection is how you get 3D on a 2D element. So those are good, but you don't want them fixed. You want them to actually do something. You want that rotation to continue. How do you do that? Animations. Now, I was a dev for a long time. Animations scared me. Any type of tool that had a storyboard frightened me. But I found once I finally understood it, in about 5 minutes, I got over that fear, and now I love them. So an animation just animates a property over time, whether that property is a color, or a position, or a transform. So at the base level, you have a storyboard. A storyboard defines all your various animations and actions. You can have multiple. You could have 2 or 3 controls that all zoom around and spin around based on some event. You'd put them all in one storyboard. In that storyboard goes each animation. Each animation is a discrete animation on a control. Control going from left to right, red to blue. Inside each animation, you have keyframes. Keyframe says, at 3 seconds, this thing should turn blue. And then Silverlight does the magic saying, well, I know it was red over here, blue over here. How do I do that? I know it was up here at 0 seconds. They say they want it down here at 3 seconds. I can figure the rest out. That's basic math. Those are what keyframes do. Expression blend will be your best friend for doing these. You can do them in XAML. You can do them in code. You know, if you're a glutton for punishment and you have a lot of time on your hands. But using blend to get these is just a snap. So we will show that. But not that. Or that. That's better. So now that we have something to actually work with that doesn't look too bad, let's go over to blend. Now I already have blend open, and blend is pointing to the same solution that's open in Visual Studio. Now these tools work in conjunction with each other. It's not either or. You can have one designer, one developer, working same projects, or like me, you probably have them open at the same time using the same solution, and you bounce back and forth. So I'm going to reload it. As you can see, it has the same layout surface. I can work with it the exact same way. I want this ball to sort of do a pulsing, I'm doing something animation. So we have this ball, we selected it, we go to the properties, and come down here, and these are the transforms I was talking about. Rotation, scaling, you can translate it, that just means moving it. So I wanted to do something over time, so I need a storyboard to put animations into. I create a new animation, or a new storyboard. I call it my dot animation, because I only have one in there. And now I have my timeline editor. Well, I want this ball to do something, say, after 1 second. I'm going to create a new keyframe. That's where I'm saying the actual value I want it to be after 1 second. And then the great thing about blend, I don't have to do any code. I can just come down here, and because I'm in this recording mode, it says I'm now recording where I want you to be after 1 second. So let's go over here to scale and make it big. There we go. So that's great, that's static. How does it actually look? How will that look to the user? Click the play button to get a preview. Ooh, fancy animations. So let's actually make that a little more fluid. It came out, but then it just sort of stopped. So let's select our storyboard. We want to auto-reverse. We want to go back. Hit play. Now it's looking real. Now it's a real application. So we can save that, come back over to Visual Studio, it reloads it, I can hide this, come up here, and here's our animation. It's not that much code. Eventually they build up, but Blend wrote it all out for you. You can see where it started, where it went to, the property it's animating. It's taking this render transform and changing its scale. And here's the element it's working with, the ellipse. So let's come back here. Let's add a few more controls. Here's some more controls. Grab those. Look at that, one step closer to an application. Let's actually have that ball do something. How do you do this in code? It's great to see it in Blend, but who's going to be running your application inside of Blend? Pretty much no one. So we'll take this button. We're going to add an event handler to it. Say click equals new. Flip back over. Actually, we got ahead of ourselves. We'll go back. We will flip over. Let's actually do something with the animation. It's simple. It's saying .animation begin. Save it. Now run it. Come over to the emulator. Now, one tip when you're developing, keep the emulator open. You don't have to close it. All you have to do is stop debugging from here. And that way you don't have a long boot time. Take snapshot. We'd actually do something there, and it plays our animation to the end, and it stops. Very easy to get working with animations. Come back over here. Styling. Anyone a big CSS person out here? A CSS wizard? Nice. You guys are also my idols. After enough selectors, my brain starts to melt a little bit. So styling in Silverlight is fairly easy. It's through the use of a style tag. As you can see in this little example, it's basically styling a font size and a foreground, and I'll show you how easy it is to apply. And styles can be per page. Just for this page, I want controls to look a certain way, or per application. Like, I want every single text box to be this hideous green color because that's our corporate color and someone loves it somewhere. You can do that. So let's look at styling really quick. Really quick is sort of relative up here. So let's go over here. Let's look at our XAML. Now we're still running, so I can just click stop. Scooch that off to the side here. So how do you do a style? How do you place it? Well, let's work with these little hash marks over here. These are where I'd want a latitude and a longitude to go, for example. And I want it to look the same. I don't want to write the same code over and over and over again. So let's see where they are in code. Let's just click. That's the text block right here. So we want to make a style for this. Well, let's add it up into the resources for this page. These are where you'll put your styles, and you can put them in the resources for the page or for the application. What do we want? We want a style. Now, like a name, you give it a key. A key is how you map the style to your elements. So this is just going to be our coordinate style. And don't forget to do a target type. That's the type of control you want the style to apply to. So in this case, it's a text block. Close that out. What do we want? We want to do a setter. So we want to set a certain style. Which one? How about that foreground color? And what value do we want it to be? We want it to be, say, 32. It's a good size. And we can copy this, paste it, and foreground. Anyone catch that 32 is not a good color for foreground? If you see me do that, please shout out. I appreciate it. And it makes for some good laughs from everyone else. How about gray instead? Okay, so we have a type, we have a key. Let's actually apply that baby. What did I do? Oh, see, there we go. I was testing you guys. Font size, how's that? Let's come down here, click on this. See, now it's really, really cranky. Let's see here. It's a setter, property, foreground, property, font size, value. Looks all good to me. Let's see if it just sort of writes itself. Style. Now, styles are resources, and they're static. They don't change. So that's a static resource. And we called that coordinate style. Save that. And you can see it's already updated. It already knows. It's already applied the values. There, right as rain. Now let's flip back over to Blend and see an even easier way to apply styles. Click on an element, right-click, edit style, apply resource. Now you see a bunch of really cool phone styles in here. This is part of our story on the phone that we bundle a bunch of styles for you. So we didn't change the controls. We just bundled a bunch of styles to make them look like the Windows Phone 7 series design system. That was a good mouthful right there. We can apply the coordinate style. Boom, Bob's your uncle. We're rocking. So now that we have styling, data binding. Data binding is all powerful. Data binding, once you get it, will change how you do your UI. Excuse me. Data binding allows you to connect UI to UI. So like a text block to a text box. And you can have the text mirror automatically with no code. More exciting is your business object, your class that contains GPS coordinates or contacts, and map that directly to a control. You don't have to do any code. You don't have to manually populate things. It's very powerful. There's two types. You can bind property to property. So I can say, I want the text on my text box to be GPS coordinate.city. It's one for one. Or you can do a list binding, and that's really powerful. List binding is how you take a collection of items, and you say, I want all these items on this control, but I want them to map to this property on this object, and this property, and this property. You can get even more advanced using things called value converters and type converters. And these say when it says red, I actually want to take that value of red and actually turn it to the real color, the RGB color of red. And you can do it for Boolean things. So is registered. You know, there's no property on a checkbox called is registered. It's true or false. But you can use a value converter to convert is registered into a true or false. And last, for data binding, it's based on change notification. Change notification means you have your business object, you change the city, well, you need to tell the system somehow. That means you implement this interface called iNotifyProperty changed. It's very simple. It's a few lines of code. And you just tell the system, hey, city just changed. Go update yourself, make yourself pretty. So let's just do a quick data binding sample. So let's save this, flip back over to Visual Studio, reload it, thank you. And these coordinates here are a good source of something to data bind. So I've already have this little class called location snapshot. A few little things, a city, a note, lat, long, a day that we snapped on. So what we want to do is we want this value over here to map to latitude. So instead of this text, we want a binding. Populates for us. And we want that to be latitude. And we want the other one. Well, let's just start with that one. Just have a simple one. So how do we actually wire that up? Great. We've said bind to latitude. How does it actually work? What we're going to do is during our animation, let's create a new one of these location snapshot called a snap. Location snapshot. Let's set the latitude to an actual value. Actually, I think for here it's 13, maybe 15. Okay, we're getting close. How do we make that final connection? We look at the name. Let's copy that. Pop back over. Whoa. There's the magic control again. And we set the data context because it's data and it's contextual, and that's the linking. That's the magic glue right there. We set it to snap. F5. Take snapshot. We start our little animation, and then we bound the data directly. We didn't have to manually say, go over here and map it. Now, the code so far doesn't actually seem much better. It just seems different, correct? So where's the true power? Well, this data context, it cascades through your entire application. It's inherited by all the controls on the page. So let's go back over. Let's stop our code. Now let's update another binding. Make this very similar binding. Ooh, I caught that in time. Oh, spelling is important. And instead of setting it directly on the control, which sort of defeats the purpose, let's set it on the entire page. This. Because it cascades through and inherits down the controls, all the controls now have their data context set to the same page. That is probably some spelling mistake on my part. Oh, thank you. Good catch. See, I like the interactivity of this. Let's say negative 115. Oh, see, we're getting truly interactive. Better? Good. Take snapshot. There we go. Data bind. And this, like I say, flows down through the entire system. It's very powerful. So let us see how we're doing on a PowerPoint. Code reuse. You can reuse code in a variety of ways. Now you don't want to write the same code twice. It's really annoying. It's a big pain. There's different ways you can do this. You can create user controls. A user control takes existing controls, say like a text box and a button, bundles them together with a little bit of logic to create a reusable component. So a login control. You write about 100 of those a year. You never want to write another one again. Create a user control. Bundle all that logic into one place. Now, you want to create another control that doesn't really have a good base type. It's not really a button. It's not really this. It's not really that. Create a custom control. That's pretty much from the ground up. A good example is a rating control. You want to create something like a Netflix rating where you can do the different stars. That's a custom control at that point. Another way you can reuse code, and this is very applicable to the phone, is you can share code across projects. And the way you do that is through a class library. You saw me create a project. You saw me create one for web, one for the phone. You can also create a class library. If you create a Silverlight 3 class library and put your code in there, you can compile it and share it between the two. You don't have to recompile. Now, anyone that knows Silverlight knows this is a big deal. A lot of times when you reuse code, it's pretty much copy and paste. It's glorified copy and paste. This says compile it and then add it to your different projects. Suddenly it'll work across the web, across Windows Phone. I have a simple little example that shows how this actually works. I won't bore you by running through all the code, but we will open up this 2-screen app. Now what I have here in my solution is I have a phone host and a desktop host. I've created a Silverlight 3 application. That's my desktop host. I've created a Windows Phone application. That's my phone host. Then down here, this third one, this is a class library. It contains a user control. That control is just a gratuitous little projection to show you actually how those work, but it's just a few lines of code. The XAML is very small. So what does that actually look like? Well, let's run it. Here's the phone. This control is running on the emulator. Now, I've already compiled this application in my web browser. Sharing is caring. Exact same code, 2 different places. On the web, on the phone. This is why you guys are now both the same type of developer. You write it in one place. You can reuse a lot of what you've known in one platform on the other side. Same thing. So that is a whirlwind tour through Silverlight. There is so much more out there, so much more in-depth. The great thing is Silverlight has been around for a while. Go grab a Silverlight 3 book. There's tons of reference information out there. Everything you read about it, you can apply to the phone. I had a lot of questions last night. How does my knowledge from Silverlight for the web apply to Windows Phone? 100% applies. Download the tools. I'm assuming everyone here has the tools. Most people. Yeah? A big yeah. Do everyone like it? Do everyone like the emulator, the tools? Good. Who here has at least 2 or 3 applications they've already thought of they want to write? Don't tell me. I don't want to get, infringe on patents here. But yeah, same thing. I have a ton of applications in mind. Be creative. Silverlight gives you the ability to have creative, delightful, immersive rockstar games, rockstar applications. Just because they're like even a line of business application Doesn't mean they have to be gray. Doesn't mean they have to be boring. Add some embellishment, add some animation, add some life. Go see other presentations today. There's a ton of them. If you just stay in this room, you're on the right track. It's all phone, all Silverlight, all the time. And resources. Like I say, there's like forums, blogs, books, podcasts. You have the full Monty. And then go to silverlight.net. There's existing forums there that answer a lot of the controls, issues that you may run into, that have other controls that you can use. There's this thing called the Silverlight Toolkit that Microsoft puts out as well. It's all open source, and you can use those controls as well on the phone. So where next? Just for everyone sitting in this room, parts 1 and 2 of the next Silverlight application talks are awesome. They're probably what you guys really want to see. Accelerometer, location support, push notifications. And then by all means, stay and go to maximizing Silverlight performance on Windows Phone 7 series. Because even though you can drag and drop and throw controls down all day, you want them fast. And the presenter giving this talk, Seema, is a rock star in making sure your applications are fast. You'll do things, you're like, well, why doesn't it work? I have everything on there. She'll tell you what went wrong, why you maybe shouldn't have 52 of the same element nested inside of each other. She'll help you untangle those performance knots. So thank you for coming. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you guys feel you have a toehold into Silverlight development. And you guys know where to go, that you have a ton of questions, know where you can find those. And now it's question time. If anyone has any questions, feel free to rock them my way. Thank you very much. You, sir, on the first mic.
I'm not really sure. I know with regular .NET code, when you compile it, it's pretty easy to decompile it with reflection. Mm-hmm. Is it the same kind of thing with Silverlight?
It is. It's the exact same thing. You can bring up .NET Reflector and look at the code. Now, the key part of that is it's a secure channel from getting your application to the marketplace onto the phone.
Okay.
So since you go through that channel, that becomes sort of one of the security measures around people popping that open.
Is there any obfuscation or anything available for the phone?
Well, there's a lot of obfuscation libraries already out there for .NET.
Okay.
You can reuse all those. So if you have an existing solution, keep using it.
Thanks.
Next question?
Hey, good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
I can use Silverlight to create a desktop application.
You can create an out-of-browser application, which is pretty much a desktop application, yes.
But does that mean I'm hosting the Silverlight runtime? And do I have to add code to that, or it's just do I get an exe out of the whole thing?
You don't get an exe out of the thing. What you do get the ability to say right-click, run out of browser, and then it adds a start menu link. And from that point, they can start it from a start icon on their desktop or in their start menu. So there's no exe for that, but there's a shortcut.
Okay, and do I get the same kind of elements? Can I create system tray icons and add to jump list and stuff like that?
You can. Honestly, I wasn't as involved with the Silverlight 4 part of stuff, so they may have added some of that. I know, at least in Silverlight 3, you could not.
Okay,
so.
Thanks.
On the data binding stuff you did, it was kind of programmatic, setting up the data source and populating it. Is there a way to do that declaratively in XAML?
You can do it declaratively in XAML, and the feature I didn't have time to show is you can do it in Blend. In Blend, it is awesome. You can actually import your class. You just say, make a new data source based on this class, and then drag and drop.
Okay, because I've seen some examples that refer to the data context as a static resource or something like that. Mm-hmm. I guess what I wasn't clear of when I just looked at that, because I'm pretty new to this, is,
okay, great.
Is the relationship between, okay, I see that you've tied a static resource to the data context, but how do you tie the content of that resource to the XAML file? Does that make any sense?
Well, usually what it is, and behind the scenes, say like my wonderful GPS application, you create your data, like it's generated from some source, your GPS, whatever, and then you set either the data context in terms of one-to-one binding or the item source for like a list. You say my item source equals this in code. That's just the one line of code you need to glue it all together.
So there is the requirement for that line of code.
There's that one line of code to get it glued up.
Okay, cool. So, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Next.
Is it possible to create a Silverlight 4 application for the browser and then use the same set of sources for the phone as long as you're not using controls that aren't available for the phone?
You said the key magic word you said was use the source. Yes, as long as you're using source that's compatible with SL3, with Silverlight 3, then you're golden.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I've got two questions. The first one is, we went through the whole Latitude program that you wrote, and where do you get those constructs from? Are those constructs already predefined in terms of the phone itself?
The latitude and longitude?
Yeah, so let's say, for example, I have, there is some driver that's running on the phone and I need information from that driver. Can I get it?
Yes. Stick around this room and you'll learn exactly how to get that information.
Great.
And
Second question was, where can I get this presentation and the sample code that you just showed?
On my blog, it's seanoster.com. Okay. That's where you can go grab all the sample source.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Is it possible to have access to a local database with Silverlight 4, for example, SQL Compact?
Well, the great thing about SQL Compact, or like, say, SQLite, is it's already in .NET source and you can recompile it and put it in your application. Now, as far as something like linking to SQL Compact in Silverlight 4, not so much right there. That becomes a pseudo security concern.
Okay.
But if you want to grab a third-party off-the-shelf .NET DB that fits in there, it'll work just fine.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
So for the example of the grid layout that you showed during your demonstration, you showed that the fact that you added rows and the things, snap to the rows.
Correct.
So does Silverlight support the concept of a relative type layout so that you can say this element is to be positioned to the right or to the left, of another element? Sort
of like a float almost in HTML, or yeah. Well, what you can do is you can combine them. Maybe I didn't actually make that clear. I realized, but you can put a stack panel inside of a grid, or you can have a canvas that fixed positions a grid, and that grid contains multiple stack panels.
Right. So, but the problem with that is that as your layout becomes very complex, right, performance of the rendering slows down.
It does.
And so I do not necessarily want to embed one layout in another, because the performance of that, especially as you start changing the orientations, really slows down. Ideally, what I would want, and what I'm accustomed to, at least currently on Android, is I have one layout where I can specify the positions of elements relative to other elements in that layout. I was just wondering, does Silverlight support that concept?
Out of the box, it doesn't. But descend from panel, and you can create your own relative to panel. And so you can actually create your own layout systems. Like the Silverlight toolkit has one called a wrap panel, where everything will flow and wrap left to right. So you can actually create one probably fairly easily. Okay. I'd be surprised if there isn't one out there already, to be honest.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Another question? Sure.
Now, given that you can't have an EXE coming out of your Silverlight, now if I want to write my own calculator application, for example, would I necessarily have to compel the user who's going to use my calculator application to go to the context menu and say, yeah, add a start menu or something, or is there a shortcut to do that?
When the user goes to your website, your like super awesome calculator website, and then they right-click and say make out of browser, it'll automatically add the shortcut for you.
Okay.
So you don't have to make them jump through hoops to add it.
Thank you.
Up front?
Okay, so just two questions. First question is, how do you interact with other applications? I mean, is there any kind of ActiveX process or things like that so that you can communicate with other applications?
There's various ways to communicate with other applications. Like for example, Silverlight on the web, in the web browser, you can actually use what's called the DOM bridge, and you can actually reach out of your Silverlight into the JavaScript on the web page and work with it that way. Also in Silverlight 4 and Silverlight 3, you can communicate with applications that are out of browser as well. On the phone, not so much. Everything's in its own isolated silo of application goodness. But there are ways to do it in Silverlight 4 and 3.
Okay, and second question is about, I would say, if we want to dive into the system and want to have access, is it possible to write some kind of DLLs and things like that and interact with Silverlight?
Yes. Silverlight 4, you can do out of browser, and then you can do what's called elevated privileges. At that point, party on. You can create COM objects that can do anything you want in the system. You're asking the user run out of browser? Okay, cool. Full permissions? Cool. Okay, now you can write against Word, you can write against Outlook, anything that has a COM object you can play with.
Okay, thanks for the presentation.
Cool. Thanks for the questions. Are we good? More? Less? Okay. Thank you.